She thumps a cane and drinks champagne. She's formidable and judgmental, but we can guarantee that she's a quintessential Lady D, but recognizes great potential. What would Danbury do?
Welcome to What Would Danbury Do, your guide to Julia Quinn's Bridgerton series from A to V. This episode, we're revisiting Sophie and Benedict a mere 3 years into their marriage to find out whatever happened to Sophie's stepsister, Posy. Please be aware that this podcast comes with a content warning for fat-phobia and damaging representations of fat people. Remember, you can join the conversation with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram using the hashtag WWDDpod. Or you can rate and review What Would Danbury Do on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. We love hearing from you.
I love that so much.
I think you missed the key completely.
I don't know. That felt right.
There are things that I am good at and things that I am not. And there are things that I enjoy doing that I am not good at.
Oh my God.
And singing is like all of those things.
So
oh
my God.
Yeah. I self-describe my singing as enthusiastic amateur. Like, I'm not good at it, but I fucking love doing it.
Yeah, so, I'm the same.
I'm with you, Kate.
Like, publishing culture is karaoke culture, and you would be astonished at how many people are actually really, really quality singers. And then there's me. And you can tell that I'm not a good singer because I've lived in Australia for 20 years, and my accent has not faded a bit. People who are good at accents are people who have a good ear, who have good pitch. I do not, and that is why I will forever sound like the Canadian that I am.
I've never thought about it that way. I'm that person who, like, I can follow someone else's voice, but I can't find the right note on my own. Like, and if you're off, yeah. I'm off.
You don't have perfect pitch, which not many people
do. It's not even about perfect pitch, Adele. I don't have pitch. I don't have pitch instincts.
I read it once in a spy novel. I can't remember which one now, but it was sort of this offhand comment about how many spies have perfect pitch, because that way they can speak all of these languages without accents. So they can just sort of swoop in and out. And that's why so many spies so often mistaken for native speakers, is because they have such good pitch. So they can speak without accents. So,
like real spies?
Yeah, like real spies.
Oh my God.
I know. I really remember nothing else about this novel except that little piece of information. And I was like, that was so cool. That's such an interesting thing to know. And then off I went. So another reason why I would never be a good spy. Reason number 1, I can't keep my mouth shut. Reason number 2, I really like to gossip. And reason number 3 is I have terrible pitch. So
why do I feel like we've had this conversation before, though? About why you wouldn't be a good spy.
Because we read romance.
Oh my God. Hi, I'm Rudy.
Hi, I'm Kate.
And I'm Adele.
Okay, so we are talking about Sophie and Benedict's second epilogue, which is also somewhat Posy's story. Allegedly. I'm not entirely sure that I buy that.
I think it's almost the book equivalent of a silent film. Like, you could see it as a slapstick, farcical, black and white film, and you wouldn't miss anything.
Actually,
there was very little talking.
It started with the omniscient narrator that's very like wink, sly wink. I'm telling you the story, but I'm also... I'm going to give you some asides kind of moments.
Yeah, like the bit where she's like, oh, that could have used a whole novel in and of itself. And I was like...
That's another story. Like, all of that Quinn. Kind of shit. But that, like, the first, 3 Bridgerton books have that. So, like, we've gone back to that style again, because why not? But then it kind of almost drops it immediately, because now we're not, like, as soon as we stop talking about Posy and we start talking about Sophie, like, then we go into, like, actual, like, current era Julia Quinn's, I would argue, more sophisticated writing style.
It's really weird that she felt the need to do a summary, because she didn't do a summary for any of the other ones. This epilogue started with think it was a reasonably long summary. It was about 2 or 3 pages, wasn't it? Of the story was her rehashing what had happened in Benedict and Sophie's courtship. But I don't remember her doing that in the other epilogues. Like in the other epilogues, she just sort of jumped into the vignette. And this one was like, okay, here's a big long summary of, you know, Sophie's past and Araminta and the 2 sisters and everything. And now you're all caught up. So boom, second epilogue. And
yeah,
it felt unnecessary. And I think that it is a very reasonable assumption to assume that the Venn diagram of people who've read the original, like the OG Bridgerton 8, and the people who've read the Happy Ever After epilogues, it's a circle. Like, there's nobody coming into the Happy Ever After epilogues who aren't already intimately familiar with the original stories. So
I thought it was so that we could reframe things around Posy.
Oh, maybe.
Like, that's the assumption that I made, was like, oh, now we're getting the same story, but Posy's not quite perspective. But, like, Posy's slightly more to the center than she was last time, because she's still not actually the focus. Because all of the important and exciting parts of it we don't get to see.
But again, like, Posy was so central to the story anyway. She was the reason that the Happy Ever After happened. Anyway, I mean, we can quibble. I think it was unnecessary, though. But then again, I also think all of these epilogues also unnecessary. So maybe it's like the unnecessariness squared that got stuck in my throat a little bit.
The insta love always to me is a bit blurg, because it's just lust. It's not love. If you don't know the person, you can't love them. If you just look at them, it's lust. Falling in love with someone's aesthetics isn't love. Like, you don't live with an aesthetic. Well, you can if you're on Insta, I guess. But I just, that whole thing, and then their kiss. She has her first kiss within seconds, and then they're fornicating on the lawn, and I'm just like, this is just ridiculous.
They try and justify it by saying, oh, well, Benedict and Sophie had love at first sight. And I'm like, yeah, but you danced a little bit. You had a conversation out on a balcony. You didn't, like, go from stammering introductions to, like, fucking in the garden within 5 minutes.
In my head, it's like they were doing, like, fish mouth to each other, like, I don't know what to say. And, like, that thing in Star Wars that I always forget the name of.
It's a trap! Admiral Akbar?
Yes, Admiral, like Admiral Abba, and then they're, like tongue, they're pashing in the garden, and then a tongue isn't the only thing in her. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just... And it's just played for laughs, and I kind of hate it because Posy is, you know, chunky or whatever, or not chunky, what do they say?
Pleasantly plump.
Fucking hate the word plump. And then the new Reverend?
Vicar.
Right? Vicar.
I don't know what the difference
Vicar,
is.
who is apparently so nice, he's always in the friend zone. Like, would a vicar be doing that?
Well, not a freaking good vicar. Isn't he supposed to be the moral center of the neighborhood?
Clearly he's not sensible, because he let his wife name... He apparently had no compunction with his wife naming their children all those terrible things. So maybe he's just a smile. That's his personality. It's a smile.
I did like how Sophie was like, no, me setting them up on this blind date gives me a carte blanche to watch them have sex. It's my right to totally spy on this completely intimate moment because I set it up. And I was like, oh, when do we do that? When we call it that, Sophie?
But also, like, I know that Sophie and Posy were not super close as sisters, like stepsisters, whatever. But, like, would you watch your sibling? I can imagine if you're quite young and your sibling is a bit older, and like there's that little bit like giggly kind of learning what this is, sly kind of watching. But as an adult, seeing my sibling and even because I also do they say that they're having sex?
The point is, he was lowering her down onto the lawn after and as they were making out. So it could have been any number of things.
Could have been some dry humping.
Yeah.
Biggest style.
It goes to that like ultimate would you rather? Like, would you rather watch your parents having sex or have your parents watch you?
That's horrific. No. Oh.
This is like the sibling edition.
Do you know what? I'm actually trying to process whether I have an answer of my own.
No, you can't. It's an impossible question to answer.
I would prefer to hear my parents have sex than them see me have sex, honestly.
You don't get to change the rules, Adele.
And rock in a fetal position in the corner. Just because I would be the most respectful of the three of us, you know?
I thought you meant the three of us.
Well, I also wouldn't want to. That all extends to that. Like, I don't want to see Kate having sex with her partner. Like, no. And that's not because I don't love them, but no. I also no. I'm a prude, right? This is coming across real strong.
I just think, look, there are people in your life that it is perfectly okay to be like, nope, they're in a non-sexual box. That's where they live. And I think that's fine. Preferably, the people you're related to go in that box. But it's not uncommon for friends to also be in that box. Yeah. That's my stance. I'm not saying it's for everyone. I'm not saying you have to put everyone in that box. But, like, if you do happen to put your family and friends in that box, that is okay.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I think that was part of the problem why the reason I had so much trouble with the summary as well was that it just took up all of these space that could have been used for Posy and God, what was his name? Vicar, whatever his name was, to actually have a conversation.
Wood something. And I'm I want to say Woodhouse or Woodward.
Woodward. Woodhouse is Emma's last name, so possibly not.
Mr. Woodson, and his name, he was Hugh.
Hugh.
Oh, Woodson. Okay.
Hugh. Like Hugh Jackman.
Hugh. I don't know, that's what I said. Are you making fun of my accent again? Hugh.
I thought you had misheard me. So no, I was making fun of myself. Like I'm talking mealy-mouthed again.
So it would have given Posy and Hugh a chance to actually have a conversation. Or, I don't know, fuck it, like a cup of tea even. There was just so much time and then there was so much time of Sophie gloating as well.
That is kind of the main problem that I had with this. Like, I actually was kind of excited to see Posy win because she was kind in Offer from a Gentleman, and she gets to be helpful with, like, Sophie gaining her HEA, and so then she's rewarded by being able to live with Lady Bridgerton, but then, like, we don't actually get to see her from her own perspective winning. Yeah, just, ugh.
Also, retroactively, there's no appearance of Posy in scenes she should exist in later books.
Even just, like, any kind of, I don't know, reflection of the fact that she lived with that family for at least 3 years. I think it is actually 3 years. Because, like, that's how long she has been living with them at this point, and then gets married very quickly. So I was trying to think it through. So Eloise would have still been at home. Hyacinth was still at home. Gregory is at home when he's not at school. And Francesca is still at home, I think. Like, this is while she is, like, I think it's while she gets engaged to John, like, in that time period. So, like, in any of those books, they should have I would have hoped that they had some kind of reflection on the fact that Posy lived with them for 3
Penelope,
years.
Yeah, Penelope goes over to number 5 for tea all the time with all the women of the house, and Posy's never there at the afternoon teas. And you would think, as a woman living in the house, she should have appeared at least once in one of those teas.
Do you mean in Romancing Mr. Bridgerton?
Yeah.
There's a massive time gap between, so like that I'm okay with.
Oh, is that?
Posy's not living there. Yeah, there's like 10 years between.
Oh. I mean, I knew there was a time jump. I didn't know it was that. I couldn't remember it was that big.
It's bigger than 3 years. That much I know. So she's not living there by that point. That's okay, well, consistent. That's okay. That's allowed.
Sorry.
Made
right. Noise.
But yeah. Anyway, it just
also like I know she needed to be like sponsored or whatever for a debut, but clearly that wasn't going very well, even under Violet's supervision. But why wasn't she living with Sophie and Benedict?
Because she would have wanted to be in London, I would think, to
everything would have been better than living with Araminta. Like everything was like a step up from there. So, and it's interesting. Like
I mean, it makes sense.
It didn't have to create the plot hole that Julia Quinn created. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Lady Bridgerton was much too powerful as well. Like Sophie, there were still so many questions about Sophie's birth and where she came from, that having Posy living with Lady Bridgerton was an impeccable decision in terms of who Posy was and what she could expect, versus Sophie, who just had that slight little, a cousin from far away, you say. Do you also have a girlfriend in Canada? Sort of storyline to it. So, yeah.
It also makes me really happy that like Benedict and Sophie don't really appear in any of the other books because they're in the country. It's where they should stay.
Benedict named his house My House, or wasn't it?
My Cottage.
My Cottage. Like,
So
what are you
stupid.
going to do with that? Anyway.
I guess we're lucky their firstborn wasn't my son.
I guess what kind of bugs me about the Posy living with Lady Bridgerton, but it's never discussed, thing is, I've had cousins and much older siblings live with me for short bursts, but like, you know, like a couple of years or whatever, and it comes up. Even if I don't actually like have that discussion with other people, it's a thing that I will reflect on and be like, oh, that time that so, like, yeah, like it's important if they were important, and if they weren't important enough, like, that makes me sad. It makes me sad that she wasn't important enough to be someone that they occasionally reflect on the fact that they lived with her.
There's one thing that I highlighted that I liked, and it was about Posy and the Bridgertons. As for Posy, she often said that her life had not really begun until she went to jail. This tended to require some explaining, but most of Posy's statements did. Posy didn't mind. The Bridgertons actually liked her explanations. They liked her. Even better, she rather liked herself. And I thought that was a really nice little passage.
It really could have been, like, that sentence, if you taken Posy out and put Penelope in, it wouldn't have been out of place. Like, there's a lot there that's very similar. I think that's probably why we all feel so warmly towards Posy, is because she's a Penelope stand-in, I suppose. All the things we love about Penelope.
Well, yeah, and I guess also, like, why I feel so cheated that we didn't get a real Posy story. Like, don't tease me like this.
Like, if you're going to build up an underdog for everybody to love, then at least let us see her fall in love on the page and not just through the window from Benedict's studio with Sophie panting after them.
The thing is, I can remember enjoying it, and I was excited to read it, particularly because it's not really featuring Benedict, so thank God. And then I'm like, oh, this is all, ugh. Like, I just sort of had the Benny Hill music and, like, it over-exaggerated kind of, silent film kind of bullshit. So,
This is so not on topic, but like 2 weeks ago, my parents were arguing over a TV show that they both watch, but my mum happened to have stayed the night with me, and so she had watched it at my place instead of like at their place with him. And then, yeah, so the next day they were arguing about like a plot point. And eventually my dad admitted he just found it like too obnoxious. So he turned the sound off. In his defense, he's very old. And so he may have grown up on silent films. But like, I'm just
really
thinking about that now.
Understood it better than your mother. That is the clincher, right?
He's like, no, well, like you can fucking see. Like they just... The dialogue was really helpful. Anyway, are we cool to move on to our What the Featheringtons? Because there's not a lot to say about the actual. Yeah.
No, there's really not. Okay.
All right.
Do we need to talk one more time about what Julia Quinn has against fat people?
Apparently we do, because so much of this story is just like really gross, fat-phobic bullshit.
Like, big time. I couldn't,
like watching an episode of Gilmore Girls or anything that Amy Sherman Palladino makes. Oh, fuck Amy Sherman Palladino, seriously.
She should have signed up to take over this, the Bridgerton TV series. They would have been
Bite your tongue.
They would have been very simpatico in terms of their idea of who is worthy for love.
God forbid anybody is actually, like, anyone we like gets called fat. Like,
yes.
Instead, they must only be plump. Pleasantly plump.
Pleasantly plump. Ugh, I feel like I need to put on my...
And I've never referred to myself as plump.
It's not a word that I like. No.
We need to like put on Auntie Kate's hat over here to explain that fat is an adjective. It doesn't have any moral attachment to it. If you can call somebody a blonde, you can call somebody fat, it is fine. Just like fucking stop with the euphemisms all the time. And particularly the, oh, she's not fat, she's beautiful shit that just, like, so much WTF in this. So much.
This felt like the most egregious one.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you guys will have a different moment, but this is the one that I came back to a few times. Sophie gave him another look, visibly disappointed with his selection. He's fat. She is not, Sophie cut in. She is pleasantly plump. I was going to say, so is Mr. Folsom, Benedict said, feeling the need to defend himself. But that you had chosen to comment upon his shiftiness. Oh. He allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Shiftiness is far worse than excess weight, she mumbled. I could not agree more, Benedict said.
Like, maybe. You can tell she doesn't actually believe that. Maybe because all fat people are also shifty.
That's what I read into this. All fat people are shifty. Unless we like them. And then they're plump.
Yeah, Quinn's got a serious blaring issue. It's come up multiple times. But also to say that, I've been to some romance things. Not all romance readers are fat, but there are fat romance readers. So it's just like, are you just wanting to body shame a reader while you're at it? Great.
Well, yeah, because if you are not thin, you should feel ashamed.
And also, you're not worthy of love.
Yeah.
Saws, fat people.
Or a HEA. Or to be a Bridgerton.
All right, well, that was mine. I'm so pleased that I brought the tone down and everybody's now thoroughly depressed.
I mean, it's not even just I'm going to be angry about this one for so long because it just like it was so like the fact that it came up so often.
And to me, that exchange that you read out felt smug. Like, it felt like Julia Quinn thought she was being very clever through it. Like, she really liked that little bit of dialogue. And that came across in the writing. Like, haha, we're going to make fun of fat people here. And it's going to be so cleverly done. I am so clever. And then moved on. And to be proud of that piece. Zing. Exactly. To be proud of that little piece of writing. It's gross. It's gross and it's tired and it's unnecessary. Let the woman eat her cookies and just be happy.
Oh, Jesus, we haven't even talked about the fucking, like, the cookies. Her
disordered eating.
That was truly upsetting. That was, like, the way that, like, one of the few moments of interiority. Yeah. Let's go with that. That we get from Posy is like her kind of agonizing over whether or not to eat an extra 3 biscuits that she wants to eat. She just doesn't want to eat them. And then she allows herself to eat one, but accidentally eats the other 2 because it's like, that was actually, that was difficult to read because I have experiences with disordered eating and it was not fun to be blindsided like that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, we don't. Can she just fucking like biscuits and like, and do you think it was like, because I caught, and maybe I'm making more of it than it was meant to, but the fact that like, then Benedict comes in and there's no biscuits for him. And it's like, it was almost this little thing of like, see what happens when you're greedy.
And Sophie was like, oh, it was Posy.
Yep.
Like, let's throw the fat person under the bus for eating all the biscuits.
Yep.
Couldn't possibly have been me, perfect Sophie, who's about to indulge in some voyeurism. So I wonder if she can actually watch. I mean, if Posy is so, unpleasant to look at.
Well, they literally, they have hired help. Just ask for more biscuits. Like, for fuck's sake. You have children. Why don't you have lots of biscuits? I think that's a rule. I don't know, Kate, you're the mother. You probably know.
I mean...
But I think having kids means that you have biscuits.
You have more than I certainly have more cookies now than I did before I had children. That is true. For one thing, we're all still in lockdown, and making cookies is something that we can all do together that takes up a reasonable amount of time.
Do you ever pretend it's science? Because it's baking?
We don't really pretend it's science. We do math. Yeah, we use it as math.
Right.
And also
volume and measurement and
fractions.
Temperatures and fractions,
and also
sorry, that's my teacher coming up.
How to follow instructions, because really that's the thing that they need to learn the most.
You should read through everything first and then at the beginning, because there was always going to be an evil teacher that at the end says, the first thing says read everything first, and then the last thing on the list is like, now all you have to do is put a star on the back of the page and you're done. Yeah. And everyone hasn't read their way through. Teacher evil. But
I had one of those teachers one time. Did not like.
And your voice is like, yeah, you know what that was like.
There was only one kid in our class who did it properly, and I continue to dislike him.
I was that child. And I feel very smug. Although I never did that to a class as a teacher. So I was not that arsehole. For me, I guess in terms of what the Featherington, it's just like Posy is so lacking in personality that she starts naming all her children after the Bridgertons. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, and then I love that the first 2 are called Sophia and Benedict, which is fine, apparently. Like, also 2 people to name your children after. Great goals. And the next would have to be Violet, except Sophie begged her not to. She always wanted the name of her daughter, and it would be far too confusing with the families living so close. It's super confusing to have Sophia and Benedict more than it is Violet. So even like Sophie's justification for not calling Posy's daughter Violet makes no sense because you're happy to have a Sophie and a Benedict next door. Like, come on.
Also, Sophie's like the third of the Benedict marriages, right? So, like, why does she think that she gets to name her kid Violet?
Yeah. You think one of the girls might have more of a...
Yeah, exactly.
Partly because of the discussion about whether Kate or Sophie get to name a daughter Violet, and partly because we had also tried to figure out what Daphne's son was going to be named. I went and double-checked the Bridgerton family tree that Julia Quinn has made that includes all of the children. And, there's not a lot of innovation happening in that family. Apparently, their partners don't get much say. I don't know.
I felt sorry for Hugh. Like, why would you name your son after your brother-in-law before you named it after your husband? Like, if you're going to name your kid after somebody, then, like, Benedict? Really?
I guess I thought that the reason that you had brought up the baby names thing was because she names one of the babies Araminta.
That is 100% why I brought it up. It's not so much the naming the Araminta because of, which, I mean, I am not going to go very deeply into this, but we are estranged from my husband's mother. We don't talk to her. We don't have anything to do with her, and she has never been a positive influence in any of her children's lives. And I cannot ever imagine looking at my beautiful brand new child and being like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to saddle you with her name just to prove that I'm a bigger person. I'm going to, give you this name to remind me of what I came through. I'm like, fuck that. That's what you tell your therapist. It's not what you name your child about. And then, not only that, Minty. I mean, maybe it's just an Australian thing?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I think that this is an Australian thing. But there was a show that I used to watch when I was a kid called Minty. And it was about an Australian girl and an English girl. They were not related at all, but they were identical. And so they meet and they swap places. And the English one was a pop star, but the Australian one, she's just a normal girl. It's basically the Lizzie
sounds
McGuire.
like Hannah Montana.
It's basically that Lizzie McGuire movie where she goes to Europe. I don't remember where, but yeah, it's basically that. There was a TV show that was that in the 90s, and I used to watch it. So I didn't clock Minty as weird.
All I can think of is the little, for our international listeners, the candy, like the little mint candy that pulls your teeth out. Doesn't taste very nice, but Australians are obsessed with regardless. There's always a bowl of them in any office you ever walk into. There's a bowl of Minties on the reception desk.
Hey.
What do you mean it doesn't taste nice?
Tastes magical.
No.
And minty.
It does not.
Secondly, it comes pre-packaged, so you don't have to worry about germs in a bowl on an office desk. And when I lived in Japan, I asked my sister to send some things over for my birthday, like underwear and toothpaste, because Japanese didn't do great toothpaste. And she sent some Minties over, and I swear to God, when I opened up my package at the school, the two other Australian teachers just miraculously appeared in my classroom because they could smell a Minty. That is the power and the pull of the magnificence that is a Minty, and it's not a candy Kate. It's a lolly.
Yeah, I'm all for respecting your cultural difference, but like, I need you to understand.
And then the American.
Yeah, it's a lolly, and it's a good lolly.
Oh, my friends, I'm so sorry. Just so sorry that this is the horizon that you're limited to, the hill that you're willing to die on.
Kate, I just need you to get your shit together, please. Like, that's all I'm asking. I don't think it's a lot.
My point is, this girl has no hope. No hope.
I mean, my other What the Featherington is like how very little Hugh and Posy talk to each other, or like how very little we see of them talking to each other before they're like dry humping in the garden, particularly because he's a vicar and one who is quite new to town, and also he doesn't know Sophie all that well, so he doesn't know that she's someone who is going to be chill about this. He doesn't even know if she's a gossip or not. Like, he quite sincerely has this thought as he's arriving where he's like, really glad I got invited over to Mrs. Bridgerton's house because, like, she seems popular and I hope she's a bit of a gossip. And then, smash cut, he's in the garden dry humping her sister. And, like, it just...
it does make me sad.
Yeah. Well, like, it's not... I mean, I'm going to continue to be sad about this whole story, but it also is just so perplexing.
I'm sad because Posy deserved better. And Hugh is 30 years old. Like, you get to 30 and you are, even if you are hit with insta-lust, like, you are still in control of yourself.
Can I ask one question? Do either of you know... So the very, very end of this short story is in reference to Minty. This one, she said firmly, is going to lead you a merry chase. And she did. But that, dear reader, is another story. Is there a story about Minty that I don't know about?
I don't think so. I think Julia Quinn went backwards, not forwards. I do wish that she would go forwards, though. I think it would be really fun.
I would really like that.
So there's this weird reference to Minty having a story / book of her own that probably doesn't exist.
Does not exist yet, but who knows what the future holds in store for the Bridgertons. Now it's time for
What Would Danbury Do?
This is where we imagine that a character from another favourite book has written to the cane-wielding fiend, Lady Danbury, to ask for advice. So this letter comes from Jolene from Mimi Grace's contemporary romance Along for the Ride. Dear Lady Danbury, I am a good sister, well, except for that incident at my sister's wedding. And when she asked for help to move cross-country, of course I said yes. But it means I'm stuck in a moving truck with the very hot and insufferable Jason for 2 days. How do I get through this weekend?
I like the sound of a hot and insufferable Jason. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, has there ever been a Jason that wasn't both hot and insufferable? Did we all freeze?
Thinking about that.
We haven't all frozen. I'm trying to think. I can only think of Jasons I've known in real life. And I don't know that I would use those words for them.
All I could think of was Jason Bear from Roswell, who played Max, and he looked like he was hot and insufferable.
Well, there's Jason Stackhouse as well from
Priestley.
True Blood. Oh, Jason Priestley, yeah.
There was Jason, who I went to school with and sat behind me in English, and he decided to try the Jedi mind trick on me. And so I turned around and he waved his hand in front of my face and said, "Rudy, you will tell me the answer." And I did not. It didn't work.
Fail.
I mean...
well, yeah. This Jason is very hot. He is a...
we didn't help you, though.
Oh, no, you didn't. We just segued hard.
We got distracted by the Jasons.
So what are we...
Help me.
So hang on, remind me of who we're helping.
We're helping Jolene.
Jolene.
All right, so Jolene has to travel with Jason.
Jolene, invest in a really good pair of noise-cancelling headphones and load your phone up with podcasts. And then you do not have to engage with Jason at all. That's some great advice. That's what Lady Danbury would do. No, it's
I
not.
feel like
She would
that's
definitely
good
not do that.
That's just good life advice across the board.
That's what Rudy would do.
How you survive public transport.
I think that Lady Danbury would probably want to know why Jolene didn't want to talk to Jason. Like, what is it about Jason that makes him insufferable?
Wow. I'm glad you asked.
Yes. Well, I was thinking that you might want me to ask that question.
So Jolene at her sister's wedding got very, very drunk and had just been recently divorced. So stood on a table and went on about her divorce at her sister's wedding,
Oh dear.
which is not a good look. And Jason, who was the groom's best friend, had words with her, which was deserved, because she made the wedding about herself, and we all hate that person. But he's also a dentist. He has worked really hard to support his mum and get through college and go to dentistry school and become a dentist, and is very detail orientated and has plans for everything. And everything has gone well for him because he's worked his butt off. He's Tongan American, and he's very good looking. But he doesn't have much fun, and his co-workers would even say he's boring. Whereas Jolene, everything kind of went pear-shaped for her quite early. And as a black woman, she's had to, fight really hard for her opportunities, and that becomes a bit of a storyline in this. So I actually picked this book up because of the amazing cover, which is super cute illustration. And I did go into this thinking it was going to be a trapped in a truck, a 2-day story, and that's actually only the beginning. So it's about two polar opposites who have less than favorable ideas of one another, and it gets very hot really fast, temperature-wise and otherwise. And I just really enjoyed it. Mimi Grace is someone I've just discovered, and I think it's great. And it was really great to see both a Polynesian and a black leads. And to see a wonderful cast of characters, and also a great feminist mentor that reminded me of Lady Danbury. So that's why I chose this book. Also, Jolene is plus size, and Jason loves that ass. So chose it for a number of reasons. But yes, Grace writes a good book.
I think that in this case, Lady Danbury would be like, listen, Jolene. I think perhaps you've got some cleaning up in your own house to do before you get to call Jason insufferable. And maybe you should just apologize and clear the air and stop turning your guilt into anger.
Pacifica is about as close to an own voice character as I'm going to get at the moment. But my reading of it versus your reading of it is always going to be different, because I would be reading as a First Nations reader.
It's really good, and the work with his family and his mother, and it's just great. Like, his mother and his auntie have a podcast together, which I thought was very, very cute.
See, my advice would have worked out, because she'd have accidentally subscribed to his show and found out that he's not as insufferable as he seems. And, true love would find a way.
That's all for this episode of What Would Danbury Do? We'll be back in a fortnight with Romancing Mr. Bridgerton's epilogue. In the meantime, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram as @BridgertonPod, or send us an email at bridgertonpod@gmail.com. This episode was recorded on the traditional and unceded land of the Gadigal, Wurundjeri, and Boonwurrung people, and edited by audio producer Rudy Bremer on Gadigal country. If you like the show, we would love if you could rate and review What Would Danbury Do on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. We love hearing from you, and it helps other listeners find us. Thanks for listening, and remember, WWDD.
What Would Danbury Do is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts.